guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. This is the second time I'm trying to film this video because I just started going off on tangents in the first version. Even if I have notes in front of me specifically to avoid the tangents, it just happened. Congrats me. So, cancel culture. I fucking hate it. I want to talk about cancel culture, and the first thing I want to say is when I talk about this, I'm not gonna act like I'm not complicit in any way, because I feel like there are moments where I've been outraged and I've responded via my emotions rather than logic or just rational response. And when I say cancel culture, I also include outrage culture and call-out culture, because I feel like they all really do come together, whether they're subsections of each other or whether their definitions are associated or similar. I feel like in the end they all boil down to a very similar thing. And I think I've not canceled people in my brain as much as like I've been outraged and I've contributed to outrage culture, so I'm partially complicit. So when I talk about this, I don't want it to come off like I didn't do anything wrong, but you need to fix yourself. Like that's not it at all. I've been thinking a lot about it just the past few years, but especially more recently as I've kind of tried to watch what happens when people fuck up online. Whether they fuck up or not, people can be canceled even for what I think is not a fuck up. But anyway, there's a difference between canceling someone and disassociating yourself with someone because you don't agree with something they did or said morally and ethically. So my example of this is, just so we're clear, if I don't like someone because I found out that they're a pedophile, or I find out that they're a rapist, or I find out that they're a murderer or some kind of criminal, if I find out these things and I don't agree and I want to disassociate myself by unsubscribing, unfollowing, whatever, that kind of disassociation from someone is not the same as canceling someone. Okay, editing me coming in just to clarify one thing. I'm not saying that you can't disassociate yourself from a beauty guru and that it has to be because they murdered someone or something. The main point that I was trying to get across is that when you disassociate yourself from someone, you think about it rationally and logically rather than just impulse and emotion and outrage. So let me just underline that difference between moral, ethical disassociation from someone because you thought things out and you decide that you don't like them as an individual versus impulse, outrage, and just bandwagon, okay? They're two different things. And also, just to say, if there's a makeup artist that you don't like that didn't kill anyone, didn't do any like huge crime, but you still don't like them and you decide to disassociate yourself from them, that's also okay. But what I'm underlining is that disassociation to me has rational thought and logic behind it as for your reasons, rather than canceling. I'm not trying to say that you have to support everyone. That is entirely up to the individual who you want to support, but I think it's the way we go about it that says a lot about who we are generally as individuals and then as communities, societies, whatever. Some errors I don't think are redeemable, like I've said before. Even if I don't think people are necessarily redeemable, I think that they should continue to try to be redeemable. Whether in the end they're redeemed or not is not really up to me as much as it's up to the person they wronged or the people they wronged. But the thing is that cancel culture makes people feel like they can't move forward. And I think that's the thing that bothers me the most, because even though my critique might be harsh on this channel, I feel like most of the time I'm not trying to say someone's over and their life is done and their career is over and they, should just give the fuck up, as much as these are things that I didn't like, these are things that I deem wrong. Maybe think about them, maybe try and fix them, maybe don't do it again. It depends, it's all circumstantial really. But cancel culture has this connotation of you fucked up. I decided that you fucked up. Whether you did or not is almost irrelevant. Once people decide you fucked up, it's you fucked up. Whether you did or not, people have already ruled against you. There's nothing you can do to fix it, and your life is over. And that's what I hate about cancel culture, because it's so final. It's so obsessed with the we almost need to eradicate you from whatever platform, which is ironic because most of the time people do bounce back. Sometimes it takes longer and sometimes they don't get back to the same level of success or like that they used to have before. But most of the time after, what, 2 weeks, everything's forgotten. And that's also the ironic part, because I feel like in cancel culture, so much hate happens so fast, and then after what, like I said, 2 weeks, it's like the hate is gone, the person's forgiven, we're moving on to the next target that is going to be harassed for days, who's probably going to be in the worst position of their lives mentally for days, and then we're moving on to the next person. Really, what bothers me about cancel culture is not the decision of not liking someone anymore, or the decision of not supporting someone anymore, but rather the decision that you don't like them anymore because you think they did something wrong. And instead of just unsubscribing, instead of just rationally critiquing what they did or what you think they did, it turns into an emotionally fueled, logicless act that almost feels like people enjoying someone's downfall so much that they don't care to see the facts anymore as much as they care to see the downfall. They want to see the numbers going down on Social Blade. They want to see the person in distress. They want this kind of weird, fucked up sense of justice that they think should occur. And I don't think that's healthy. And I think that, on the contrary, it'll just lead to genuinely everyone being canceled, because as time progresses, I feel like there's less and less of a grasp on what really is significant, like what really is worth disassociating yourself from someone versus what is some petty thing you disagree on that you decide is suddenly so important that it's worth, you know, starting a hate campaign against someone. Hopefully I'm making sense, because I feel like I make sense to myself, but not the buzzwords that people use while this cancellation is happening, to begin the cancellation, during the cancellation, after the cancellation, is that we use terms too loosely. I say we because I'm sure I've made the mistake at some point. Misogyny, racism, homophobia, transphobia, whatever other very intense and serious term you can think of. I've seen those terms being thrown around very liberally, to the point where terms that really need to be respected, like racism is not a small thing that you just say, oh, that was racist. Like, no, let's think about if it was or not, because if you just throw it around, it starts to lose its meaning. That's a very dangerous precedent to set, right? Just like if a man critiques a woman, does it automatically mean he's a misogynist? No, maybe he just disagrees with her. But I feel like online, a lot of people try to attribute meanings that are not there. A lot of people project things that are not there. And sometimes it becomes, you know, really an identity politics thing, to the point where it's like, a man disagrees with a woman on some political issue. Sometimes it's that simple. But I feel like people will run to say it's misogyny because, why? Because that makes people outraged, that makes people pissed, that makes people stop thinking logically, and that makes people jump onto this bandwagon, oh, like, fuck this person, he's a misogynist. And that's just an example of how real misogyny will then just be undermined because, you know, now everyone is some kind of transphobe, homophobe, whatever. Does that make sense? We should just be very careful with the words we choose to use, specifically because we don't want these important words to lose their meaning. So when racism is actually happening, when homophobia is actually happening, we take it as seriously as it should be taken. I think that cancellation also includes people thinking that they have more power than they do, or people taking someone's life into their own hands. And by that I mean, I have seen situations multiple times where cancellation is not just, oh, we're not going to watch your videos anymore, oh, we're going to unsubscribe, we're not going to support you online anymore, but rather it turns into almost like a plot to ruin the person's life generally. And by that I mean, like, trying to find out where they live, contacting their relatives, finding their address, contacting their job, which are all things that I don't think are appropriate for cancellation type bullshit, which, like I mentioned before, there's a difference between cancellation and disassociation. And I feel like because people get so in the heat of the moment, they feel like they're allowed, or they should go as far as, you know, contacting their job, making people lose their job, making people get evicted, contacting landlords. And I just feel like this is all setting up a very dangerous precedent of what's okay to do. And since outrage culture, cancel culture, call out culture, whatever, gets people so in their feelings, it's it's like logic flies out the window, and I just feel like people are taking things to levels that I deem scary. You know, like if I was ever canceled, if I'm ever canceled, I'm sure at some point I'll get canceled over something. The idea that people would start contacting my family or contacting where I live or doing anything that is real life shit, if you think of it like that, even you, whoever is watching, whether you post shit online or not, just think of it as if it was you. When you think of it that way, it just becomes very scary because there's no consideration in what's appropriate. There's no consideration of what is actually an egregious act compared to just something you disagree with. There's just a lack of consideration that is scary because, as we all know, when we're in the heat of the moment, it's very easy to say things we don't mean. It's very easy to act out. And imagine if you get in the heat of the moment and you decide someone's canceled and you go out of your way to actually damage someone's life to the point where, like, sometimes it's somewhat irreparable. Bottom line is that I think that cancel culture reminds me a lot of Black Mirror, and I don't think that that's a good thing. Let me know what you think down below about cancel culture and what you think the problem is with it. Very curious to know your guys' opinions. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.